I wonder if they'll notice if I'm wearing a different beanie today. No, I think it's pretty still apparent that it's a Titans beanie, Right? I mean, it's blue, it's just shining, and it just kind of has a different symbol on it. But I don't think they'll notice. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Titan Tavern, where all guests and fans are welcome. I am your host, Tristan. Now, everybody, grab your favorite drink and let's talk about one of my favorite teams and what in the world they're gonna do for this next upcoming season and this off season. Yes, and of course today we are going to be talking about the Tennessee Titans. My personal favorite team, and it has been for a long time now. Now, of course, if you don't know, the Tennessee Titans finished 6-11 this season, finishing at the bottom of the AFC South. Yes, that is very deflating, considering the other teams that are in this division. But sadly, the Tennessee Titans are no longer the dominant force in that. Really, I don't think they ever really were. But that's besides the point now. The Tennessee Titans are going into this offseason with a brand new coach, Brian Callahan. And oh boy, does he have a lot of work that needs to be done. Of course, today we're going to be talking about the offense and what in the world they can do now. So as far as it goes for position groups, we're going to be separating this video per groups. We're going to be looking over the stats of every player and seeing what their future should be with the Tennessee Titans. So as far as offense goes, there's no other position better to start with than the most crucial position in all of sports. Yes, of course, that is the running back. No, I'm just kidding. It's the quarterback. Of course it is. Now, of course, if you go over, looking over the stats for this team, for their quarterback, you will notice that we did not have a quarterback that played more than 10 games. And the one that played the most games was, of course, quarterback Ryan Tannehill, who is a free agent at this point and potentially will not be returning, more than likely not be returning to the team for next season. Now, if you go over his stats, you see for 10 games, playing the most, this would actually be a shocker, but he had the best completion percentage for people that threw the ball more than 6 times. Ryan Tannehill threw 230 times. 230 times, but only had 149 completions, averaging to a 64.8% completion percentage, throwing for 1,616 yards, which is 7 yards per attempt, which I don't really know if you would consider that good, considering most quarterbacks in 10 games had well over 2,000 yards. But of course, if you know Titans football, you know we love to run the ball. Averaging about 161.6 yards per game. That's not so good. That is not good if you want to keep up with a lot of teams. in this day and age for offense. And of course, the most shocking part is through playing 10 games. Yes, 40 quarters. 40 quarters. He threw for an astounding 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Yes, he only threw 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. That is not what you want to see for your team. However, it's not entirely just his fault. While he did have a massive declining year, the whole team had a down year this time. Not only did he only throw over 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, he also got sacked a whopping 32 times. Which doesn't seem like a lot, but considering he played only 10 games. Let's see here, if you do the math. Let's see here. Yeah, that's a lot of sacks per game. That's basically at minimum 3. At minimum 3 sacks a game. Plus 2. And of course, yeah, he's an unrestricted free agent, and I do not see him returning. And next, of course, you have Will Levis, the rookie quarterback who came in and only played in 9 games, threw the ball 255 times, 15 times more than Tannehill did. So whenever it swapped over quarterbacks, we went to throw a lot more, which is a normal. Normally, whenever you go into the backup, you start running the ball more. But I'm guessing because the Titans' offense is very backwards, that's how it works. He threw the ball 255 times, completing 149 completions. Yes, that is factual. Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis had the exact same amount of completions. However, he threw for 108 yards, averaging 7.1 yards per attempt. However, he threw 8 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. So the ratio is a lot better. However, you do want to see that number go up a lot. However, he did unfortunately get sacked 28 times. Now, what do I see the future for this guy? I think you give him another 2 to 3 seasons. You're bringing in a new head coach. He's bringing in new guys. It's going to be new guys all over the place for the coaching staff. Give him a chance. Let's see what he's got. Because really, it's the only thing. It's the best thing to do in this scenario. And of course, you have the other quarterback in the room, Malik Willis. He had a whopping 5 attempts this season, completing 4 out of 5 for 80%, for 74 yards, averaging 14.8. But the numbers are a little bit skewed whenever you only throw for 5 passes. Of course, he threw for 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, but he still got sacked 4 times. And if you're keeping track, 3 quarterbacks, and that is 64 sacks given up. Yes, I'm going to be talking about that later on in this video. But I just wanted to go ahead and address that right now. So as you can't tell, for the Titans, their quarterbacks, it was not a good season to be a Titans quarterback this season at all. Hopefully it'll get better with a an offensive-minded coach in mind. Hopefully, a lot of things will change. We'll just have to wait and see in the future for this next season. As a Titans fan, I'm just hoping that things get better. But then again, it's really only going to be getting better. I don't think it can get any worse other than if you want to be like the Panthers. Or the Bears. Who are respectable. Never mind. Yeah, you just don't really want to be like the certain teams. But for all of that smack talk, let's just hope that quarterbacking next season gets better. And the next subject we will be talking about is, of course, the running back room. And with that, we are now moving on to the running back position of this offense. So in total, the Titans had 444 exactly rushing attempts. Now, you may think, that's pretty typical because the Titans had a certain running back that is known across the league as King Henry. And of course, Derrick Henry, playing in all 17 games, ran the ball 280 times, which is oddly enough about a normal season for him. However, he only had 1,167 yards this season. Sadly, he wasn't able to break any 99-yard touchdowns, but he was able to break a lot of them. And a lot of them also for losses as well, because, well, if you have King Henry, you're going to be running the ball a lot. And opponents saw right through that game plan and said, you are not beating us on the ground. Of course, averaging with 280 attempts for 1,167 yards, averaging 4.2 yards per carry, and 12 touchdowns. Leading the entire team in touchdowns again, Derrick Henry, with 0 fumbles throughout the season. He has 280 attempts, 280 times he was handed the ball. And this is how many times that man fumbled the ball. Unfortunately, however, more than likely he is not going to be staying with the Titans, so I think this is pretty much it for his career as a Titan. Even if Brian Callahan wants to see if he wants to come back, I don't think he will personally. I think he's going to go try to get a ring, and I respect it for him, and honestly, I hope he does get a ring soon before he retires, because he definitely deserves it after carrying the Titans for seasons. And with that, next we have Tajay Spears, who honestly is a up and coming running back who I really do think is going to be something bright in this team. He ran the ball exactly 100 times, only getting 453 yards on the ground, but did have to catch the ball quite a lot, averaging 4.5 yards per game. And of course with 2 touchdowns as well as 0 fumbles lost as well. That is phenomenal. Turns out our 2 best running backs didn't even fumble the ball once. Just other people fumbled the ball a lot. But I do see him being a really good up-and-coming running back in the running game as well as receiving game. And I do have high hopes for him. I think he can be something really good. After all his rookie season, he had the best teacher possible for becoming a good running back. And that is one of the best running backs in NFL history, King Henry. No bias advised. And of course, with that, you now go on to the rest of the rushing attempts. You had Will Levis, 25 carries for 25 carries for 57 yards. Tannehill, 17 carries for 74. Chris Moore, 2 for 39. Malik Willis, 5 rushes for 21 yards. Traylon Burks, 5 for 18. Jonathan Ward, 3 for 11. DeAndre Hopkins, 2 for 9. Chigo Okonkwo, 2 for 6. Amani Hooker, 1 for 2. 1 rush, 2 yards. Ty Zenter, 1 rush, 0 yards. And of course, Ryan Stonehouse, the legendary punter himself, 1 rush for negative 11 yards, totaling out to 440 carrying attempts for 1,846 yards. And of course, with that, brings it the total to 16 touchdowns in total rushing. However, 10 fumbles, 2 from Tannehill, 2 from Levis, 1 from Chris, 1 from Malik Willis, 1 from Stonehouse, and 1 from Zenter. Yeah. And more, unfortunately. So we did fumble the ball a decent amount through the rushing game. However, oddly enough, we only lost 1. So you fumble the ball 10 times but only lose 1. That's a great 90%. And now, of course, on to the one that I'm going to be talking about the most. And that is the receiving game. This one and the next core is going to get a lot of attention. Because these 2 cores, I think by far need the most change in total. Because while I believe Will Levis can give it his best, I think we got a good running back of the future. The receivers and offensive line. Yeah, this is going to be something. And of course, now we are talking about the wide receiver core. A core that honestly actually was kind of, well, very underwhelming. With a surprise acquisition from last offseason where we got DeAndre Hopkins, one would be surprised that he was our leading catcher, our leading target, and our leading in touchdowns and yards. DeAndre Hopkins, through the 17 games of the season, he was targeted 137 times. 137 times, yes. However, he only caught 75 of those. Of course, not all those are just on him. There are overthrows that were done to him, underthrows, bad passes, but of course also pass deflections as well as just drop passes in general. However, despite having over 50 failed attempts towards him, he did have 1,057 yards, averaging 14.1 per catch for 7 touchdowns with a long of 61. And of course, 7 touchdowns. Of course, he also, as well as fumbled 0 times. So one thing that's actually pretty well coached about the Titans, except for quarterbacks, is ball security. And then next, of course, you have, and yes, I'm including the tight ends in this situation, Chigakonkwo, because basically our tight ends are our receivers. Or they like to be used as receivers. And he was our second leader in targets, our tight end, Chigakonkwo. He was 54 for 77 for 528 yards, averaging 9.8 per catch, which is actually really, really good. However, he only did get one touchdown, which is pretty disappointing, but all in all, he was actually really good, and considering the quarterback room this season as well as the line this season, he still did pretty daggum good, in all honesty. Of course, then you have our second leading receiver, Chris Moore, and you'll notice the drop-off here. You thought, yeah. Chris Moore was our second leading receiver, and he was only targeted 35 times. 35 times, yes. DeAndre Hopkins, our leading receiver, was targeted 137 times. Our second most targeted player was 77 times. A full 50 targets less exactly. And then to our third leading receiver, 35. Of course, he was 22 for 35 for only 424 yards, 0 touchdowns, with a long of 49. However, he did as well a fumble. And next, of course, you've got the number 4 receiver, which we can speak about. Oddly enough, it's a running back, Tajay Spears. He was targeted a grand total of 70 times, catching the ball 52 times, adding on 385 yards. And of course, he as well had 1 touchdown, and however, while receiving, he did have 1 fumble. And then next down is Nick Westbrook-Akine. Honestly, actually, he's been a very good kind of safety net, I want to say, for these past few seasons. Only being targeted 45 times and catching 28 times for 370 yards and 3 touchdowns. He is actually very reliable whenever it does come to the end zone, as well as whenever it does come to sideline catches as well. So he gets targeted a lot less, but the times that he is targeted, it is usually a lot more risky. So he's actually been pretty phenomenal, and I do like him a lot, and I think definitely you should keep him. Oh boy, this next one. Traylon Burks. Only playing in 11 games, he was only targeted 30 times, and he caught 16 catches. He was 16 of 13 in 11 games that he played for 221 yards. Now, safe to say he has been very underwhelming ever since he has been drafted by the Titans. And even back whenever he was drafted, no Titans fan understood. And I still don't see why. It's been a rather underwhelming season. Underwhelming career with the Titans, and this was supposed to be his season to break out. Let's just hope with a new head coach, maybe he breaks out this time because, man, he's got a lot of work to catch up on to not be labeled as a bust, because he is nearing that territory. And you never want to say that for a player, and I never want to say that for anybody, because I hope for the best for every player that goes into the league. But man, it hurts, considering what was given up for him, if you know. And then, of course, you have people like Kyle Phillips, only played 9 games, 15 of 22 for 181. Josh Wild, 9 of 15 for 94. Trayvon Wesco, another tight end, 1 for 3 for 21 yards. And of course, you just keep going down the list until you have, yes, one of the trick plays that did actually work, but you could tell it's just the Titans having fun. Jeffrey Simmons did catch 1 pass for 2 yards and a touchdown. So you know what? Why not? It was a disaster of a season if you were a Titans fan, but you know what? You had a few highlights like Derrick Henry being 2 for 2 for passing for 2 touchdowns. Well, actually, no, it was 2 for 3. His actual stats are 2 for 3 for 2 touchdowns. Still 0 interceptions. It's a better ratio than all the other quarterbacks, I mean. And then, of course, you have the offensive line. The offensive line led up 64 sacks this season. That is not good. That is not good at all. Honestly, I say what you do is you take Detroit's... You take what Detroit has done. If I'm Brian Callahan going to the situation, I'm taking notes from what Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions have done, where they built through the trenches. The Titans always have a good defensive line. Now you just need to figure out how to build a good offensive line for once. Because if we can get a good offensive line, I think the receiving core, I think the quarterback play and the receiving play will get a lot better. Mainly because the quarterbacks won't be running for their life and getting injured because they keep getting sacked nearly every single play. So if I'm Brian Callahan, I am looking into this draft and looking into free agency, and I'm saying we are probably not getting a sexy pick. Unless an amazing wide receiver falls to you in this draft, go for the best offensive lineman in this draft that you can get. And that's what I would say. If you cannot get a wide receiver at your spot in the first round that you love, you just have to say, we're not going with the sexy pick, we're going offensive line. Because once you start building through the trenches, your team gets better. So basically this video was all about what the Titans need to do. I think they've got a great running back. I think they need to get somebody to replace Derrick Henry, get a good bulky running back, or get a good fullback, which is going to be hard to find. But I think you should be able to find one. Get better at receiving, but target that offensive line first. You start with the offensive line, you build that up, and if we've got a good offensive line, it carries, because it carried a lot of difficulties with the Eagles whenever they had issues. And you look at the Lions, you look at San Francisco, who had a questionable offensive line at times, and they were still very good. Detroit, who has one of the best rated offensive lines. I mean, come on. And then you look at other teams, like you look at the Texans, who didn't have a good offensive line but still made the playoffs. But honestly, part of that was just sheer magic in C.J. Stroud. But you saw what happened whenever that offensive line got exposed. That was a thing. Like with the Commanders, with the Giants, you saw a bad offensive line, and you saw their quarterbacks get hammered down to the ground. You saw people get injured. Even with the short, brief time period that we had Aaron Rodgers on the Jets this season, the only reason that he was running around was because he was trying to escape getting sacked from the Buffalo Bills in that very first game. If he had a good offensive line, he wouldn't have had to be running around like crazy. So he probably wouldn't have torn something. And then who would have knows what would have happened with this season? You of course have people like Tua who was dangerously close to having to end his career extraordinarily early because he suffered 2 concussions last season. And we've already seen what happens, for example, Luke Kuechly, a very dominant player that was in the NFL. Loved watching him on the Carolina Panthers. But sadly, due to concussions, he had to end his career. We've seen so many people get injured, dude. This season especially. And a lot of them were quarterbacks. And you gotta say, we gotta build this line. Because if you want Will Levis to be the quarterback of the future, get him protection and then get him some weapons. You gave him a good running back. Now please, get that man some guards so he can stand in the pocket for more than half a second. And then get him another receiver. Because you've got a blanket net in DeAndre Hopkins, who he does seem to have a good connection with. But past that, you got Chiga Okonkwo. You got to question him. Is he going to be the tight end of the future? I think he can be. He's just got to keep getting better. And I think he can keep developing into a better tight end. But past that, you've got to give him a wide receiver 2. You've got to give him a wide receiver 3. You got to get those. You got to get him two more wide receivers. And then you got to give him a good running back to rely on. Because if you don't have everything working on offense, it's going to show. The Bills suffered countless losses because they couldn't run the ball. The Atlanta Falcons couldn't run the ball, and they blew a 28-3 lead. The San Francisco 49ers completely stopped running the ball, and they blew a 10-point lead. Running the ball is crucial in the NFL, but heavily overlooked. You've got a good running back. Now it's time to get him some targets and get him a line. And then I think, truly, this offense can take off. And of course, that is all today. Thank you for joining. If you liked, please like, follow, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I hope all of y'all have a fantastic day now. And remember to pay your tab and tip your waitresses and waiters. Have a good one. And of course, as always, tighten up, baby.